Welcome to the football show on an unusual day, Sunday, the last day of the Scottish Premiership season for the bottom half of the Scottish Premiership. Here's what happened in the top half yesterday as we summarise the full-time scores and the half-time scores in the Scottish Premiership. Celtic dispatched 5 past Aberdeen and got the SPFL trophy. Hearts drew 1-1 with Hibs and secured 4th place in the Premiership. And Rangers finished off their season with a comfortable 3-0 win at St Mirren. Today, in the bottom half of the table, it's Kilmarnock leading Ross County by 1-0. So Derek McInnes' side, if it stayed that way, would be safe in the Scottish Premiership for another season. Ross County would be looking at the playoff place. It's Motherwell 1, Dundee United 1, and St Johnstone 1, Livingston 0. Dundee United would be heading down to the Championship. So that's the quick summary of what's happening in the bottom half. Hugh McDonald, I'm delighted to say, is with me here on the Sunday. Let's get a quick update on that 45 minutes at Rugby Park from Adam Binney.
Half-time here at Rugby Park, it's Kilmarnock 1, Ross County 0, and as it stands, Derek McInnes' Kilmarnock are going to be safe and they'll stay in the Scottish Premiership for next season. They got that all-important opening goal in the 36th minute when Danny Armstrong sent a low cross to the front area of the box, just before the front post, like in the corner area of the 6-yard box. It was met by the toe of Brad Lyons. The midfielder just poked it high into the roof of the net to give his side the advantage. Malcolm Mackay will need a massive response from the Staggies in the second half if they're to avoid that relegation playoff spot for next week and keep themselves safe after today, because as it stands, it's Kilmarnock 1, Ross County 0.
Yeah, I think Derek McInnes will be more than happy. Keep it safe, don't do anything stupid, and we're back in the Premiership next season. And he's got a little bit of leeway as well, because the draw suits them as well. I mean, Ross County have to come out and get 3 points. You know, they've got to go. So Ross County with 45 minutes to score 2 goals. And in many ways, it was an easy half-time team talk for Malky Mackay, because he's just got to go out, use everything, let's go for it, use his subs and try to get a victory there. I think Derek McInnes is under the radar, but for me, I think, and I've been critical of him in the past, Peter, but I think he has absolutely completed, if this result stays somewhat similar, and he stays not only out of the relegation, but out of the player spot, I think that's an incredible achievement given the resources that come on. Yeah, Dundee United, I think even Jim Goodwin, who is now the Dundee United permanent manager on a 2-year deal, even he knows they're looking at the Championship and a rebuilding job there. Let's find out what the first 45 minutes look like with Kerry Pollock.
Half-time here at Fir Park, and it's Motherwell 1, Dundee United 1. Kevin Van Veen wasted no time in getting his side ahead within the opening 10 minutes here this afternoon. He was played in nicely by Sean Goss, the striker, then took it around Jack Newman in the United goal and slotted it calmly into the back of the net, ticking off goal number 29. United were throwing everything at Liam Kelly and the Motherwell goal, a few chances from Glenn Middleton and Stephen Fletcher getting involved as well, but just unable to convert any of those chances into goals. They were awarded a penalty though for a handball of Bevis McGavie. The defender wasn't even looking at the ball at the time of the incident, but nonetheless the referee had a look at the monitor and awarded the penalty. It was Jamie McGrath that stepped up to the spot and slotted it past Liam Kelly to put the level up the scoreline. It stands here at the break. Motherwell 1, Dundee United 1. It's going to take another massive effort from United in this second 45, and of course Van Veen will be hunting down goal number 30. I'll be back at full time with another update for you. It stands here at Fir Park at the break. Motherwell 1, Dundee United 1.
Van Veen, he's by the way, he's taking penalties, corners, free kicks, you name it.
But good on, I mean, what a season, what a way to earn it with that great consecutive run of goals, keeping that going today. Be interesting in the summer to see, well, interesting now, after we've got 45 minutes to go for the end of the league season, so it'll be interesting after that to see the machinations around Kevin Van Veen.
Yeah, what about St Johnstone Livingston? Not a lot at stake, but Patrick Mullen's there.
Half-time here at McDermott Park, and it's St Johnstone 1, Livingston 0. The only goal this one coming in the 17th minute. It's all started through a Ryan McGowan header that's flowing maybe 20-30 yards over the top of the Livingston defenders into the box, and in runs Dre Wright, who slashes the ball home underneath the Livingston goalkeeper's legs. It's been an incredibly poor first 45 minutes of football, and you just get the feeling we're moving through the motions here in Perth, but let's hope for everyone's sake that it improves in the second half. But at the break, it is St Johnstone 1, Livingston 0.
That's why I love Patrick. You get 100% honesty.
That's right. There was, I think, the Lilos and the sunglasses might be. Well, those players today, the season has more or less ended the day early for them, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to William Smith, who's joined us, Danny, Martin Haley as well, Norman Heaney, Andrew Breslin, and I think Andrew is right to point out, well done to Celtic ladies. They defeated Rangers ladies by 2-0. So the women have won the Scottish Cup at Hampden. A crowd of just over 10,000 watching that one. I thought there might have been a wee bit more, Hugh.
Especially with the weather, I thought there might have been more, but still, I mean, it's an increase in the 4,000 from last year's final, and it shows that, you know, big steps have been taken. We've had 15,000 at Celtic Park for a league game, so big steps have been taken this year with the women's football. And the end of the league race was just spectacular.
Yeah,
just spectacular.
Absolutely, and well done to Fran Alonso. 2 set pieces undone Rangers, and Celtic can celebrate that win in the Scottish Cup. So it seems like silverware all across the weekend for Celtic. They were handed the SPFL trophy. Of course, Celtic hunting down the treble with Inverness Cali Thistle, the only team now standing in the way of Ange Postecoglou landing a treble, something that Martin O'Neill managed to do when he arrived as Celtic manager. I know he was up walking along the Celtic way yesterday with the trophy to hand over to Ange Postecoglou, and I think even the Celtic manager, the current one, is not looking at what he can do to replicate O'Neill's achievements.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about emulating Martin, because I don't think I ever will, and Martin probably told me that before anyone else. So it's just about, like I said, bringing another sort of special season to this football club. You don't take these things for granted. I know that the club's had a lot of success recently, and a lot of trebles, but that doesn't mean that you start every year with some given right to win those things. You've got to earn every one of them, and we've got ourselves in a great position now. We're one game away from doing that, but we've got to prepare well for it, and we've got to play well for it.
Well, certainly played well after, I think, some lacklustre performances over the last couple of weeks since that split. And of course, Ange Postecoglou, right to point out, I think, to a number of people, they are the champions. There is that little feeling of taking your foot off the gas, but they certainly put the accelerator back on yesterday, Hugh.
They didn't have, and it was his strongest team, I think, anyway. I mean, obviously stripped of Carter Vickers, who can't play because of injury, so it was a strong team. I think they were in the mood very much to show the Celtic supporter that we're back on form.
Yeah,
I think we're getting a penalty at Rugby Park, Peter.
Yeah, we are indeed, because Danny Armstrong has been upended in the box, and it's a chance for Kilmarnock to score the second, and I think that really would put the tin lid on Ross County's hopes of, at least trying to avoid that playoff position. I think we are now looking at Partick Thistle against Ross County in the playoff, because it'll be a tall order for Ross County to score 3 goals. Armstrong, no problem whatsoever, puts the ball in the back of the net. So they're 2-0 up now. And to be perfectly honest with you, Hugh, I thought there might have been a spark from Malky Mackay's County, but it didn't materialise.
Yeah, and I think we were all waiting for it for a long time, Well, I certainly was, because I always thought, especially since Christmas, when they were already at the bottom end of the table, you were thinking, well, Ryan McGregor and certainly back his manager. We know the quality of the manager. He's a top class coach. He's coaching the top league in England. They seem to have attracted goals in the team with White and Brophy. So it looked as if they would be, not favourites to get out of it, but there would be hopes that they could get out of it and progress up the league. But now, that's the deepest. I mean, they're literally at the bottom of the well at the moment. I mean, 3 goals to say in the Premiership.
It's not going to happen. Let's be honest about it. Can I just say to you that Dundee United now only need 6 goals because Stephen Fletcher has scored for them. They're 2-1 up on Motherwell, but even that's a tall order, Hugh.
That is a tall order, but Yeah, so what was the difference? Difference was an 8-goal difference, so they've reduced it to 7, and Ross County losing by 2 takes it down to 5, so they still got a bit to go.
Yeah, still need another.
But I mean, it would be classic Dundee United if they were get relegated automatically on goal difference, wouldn't it? I mean, that would just put the cherry on the top of a absolutely awful cake for Dundee United this season.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Jim Goodwin becoming the manager? My initial feeling when I looked at it, and they've highlighted a 2-year deal for Jim Goodwin. I like Jim Goodwin. It didn't go well at Aberdeen. He couldn't get a trick out of them in any capacity whatsoever. I hope he's given enough time here. I would suggest that next season, Hugh, that maybe we should be looking at sacking boards instead of managers.
Well, the whole thing's been a shambles at Dundee United. Incidentally, just go back to the goal difference thing, that 9-0 at Celtic, at Tannadice by Celtic, is probably might end up being the result that kills them, because that's some deficit. I was surprised, Peter, so I always think my gut reaction is, when you so why were you surprised? And I thought, giving somebody a 2-year deal, on the day where they're almost certain to be relegated, I thought there was maybe time just to take a pause, a breath. Maybe they've done that this week, and see where they are going forward. There seems to me to be a sense at Dundee United, certainly at the top, of it drifting. We saw people stepping down, we saw people trying to distance themselves from the club, and it's got that feel of, it needs a bit of commitment from the top, a bit of strategy, a bit of desperation.
Brian's just said here, Peter, why are Dundee United rewarding Jim Goodwin for failure to keep them up? He was brought in to save them. It's a good point that Brian makes, but at the end of the day, it wasn't his fault. He had 3 wins, consecutive wins at one point, which again, I was flabbergasted by, because I thought, the biggest criticism of Dundee United has to be with the players. They've been, well, I take that back. Secondary, the board is a shambles. There's no leadership, there's no structure, there's just this scattergun approach to signing people. The one thing that I think Jim Goodwin needs to make sure next season with this board is, by the way, not only am I the manager, I'll decide who I want. I'll give you a list. You go and get them. Don't you come in with a list of players that I've got to coach, because that is tantamount to disaster. That's what I think has happened.
Absolutely. I mean, apart from just the personalities of the players and things, the whole squad was completely and utterly unbalanced as well. I mean, he was playing with a squad that it was difficult to get a tune out, because they didn't have the required instruments, the good thing about Dundee United, and it is the merest of consolations at a desperate time for Arabs fans, is that there'll be necessarily huge changes going down into the Championship. There'll be players that'll leave. There'll be an exodus from there. There'll have to be a recalibration of the personnel at the club, what they want to do next season, how they want to get out of that division, because that division is. This year it was a poor division, Peter, in that everybody was cutting each other's throats, and Dundee, who I thought were the best team in the division anyway, just stumbled over the line. Next year, Dundee United have got to take that by the, really by the scruff of the neck.
Yeah. Just a quick word on Celtic and Ange Postecoglou. At times they were just running over the top of sides when it meant something.
Yeah, I think the whole commitment to it is when he got results in all the big games, all the games that mattered, he got the results. Even at Ibrox in what we used to call the Neardy game, 2-1 down. Looking back, could that have been a catalyst for Michael Beale's team to mount a serious challenge? But they kept on going right to the end and got that late equaliser. And the image that always stuck to me with that day is when it went to Kyogo Furuhashi, ran into the back of the net, grabs the ball and runs back up the park and places it on the centre spot to say, no, we're going again, we're going to try and win this.
Yeah.
And, there was no, and we all know, even at the time, that 2 each was a terrific result for Celtic. It was, having the status quo going on. But that sort of inbred thing, the amount of late goals that Celtic scored, important goals, the way that the top players maintained really high levels when it mattered.
Yeah.
I think that was key to winning a league fairly comfortably.
Yeah, the other thing about it as well, I think that there's a real there's a kind of a division between how you view the season. I always look at August to December, and there's more criticism on the basis of how they perform in Europe. That's when you see the level of player he's got and who's up for it and who's not really at that level. January to May, it always seems that once they're out of Europe, it's now players trying to, maybe put themselves at the forefront of the manager's mind to stay there. I do think he's got about 5 or 6 players, Hugh, that he's going to shift on that just are not up to what he's looking for.
Well, there's a capacity for a huge turn, not just the players that are in and around the first team at the moment, but all the people have been forgotten about, the Ayetis, Barkas, James MacArthur. I mean, there's Sorrell. There's all these people are still in the books.
Yeah.
So they'll take some shifting because they're on good contracts and good wages. So there'll be a lot of negotiations to get them. And then yes, the players that are in the team and on the cusp of the team, there's discussions to be had about a few. And we know as well, not just at Celtic with Ange Postecoglou, but all over in his career, he's completely and utterly ruthless when it comes to changing personnel. I mean, Giakoumakis and Juranovic went without a bag of leave.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you think is going to be out the door at Celtic, and how many players do you think Ange Postecoglou needs to sign? Well, they're the champions, and of course they got the trophy. Callum McGregor lifting yet another trophy with Celtic, and his medal haul is well impressive. He's up there. Of course, James Forrest has got an impressive medal haul. Scott Brown, I think Bobby Lennox, Billy McNeil, they're certainly up at that level. So Celtic thrashed Aberdeen by 5-0. I think Barry Robson was quickly into the press conference and out again saying he wasn't happy with the way they finished with that match, but maybe the whole season has caught up with him now, and I think I think Barry Robson will be well happy with what Aberdeen have achieved since he came in there and made permanent manager. Incidentally, congratulations too to Stephen McLean, who gets a 3-year deal at St Johnstone, Hugh.
Yeah, and not unexpected. He did what was required of him, kept him out of any last week problems. I think there's an element now of boards looking at people who are incumbent are there.
Yeah.
And think they're a safer bet than bringing anybody in, and maybe a cheaper bet than bringing anybody in as well.
Yeah. I'm just telling you now, if you just joined us on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel, thank you very much. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Kilmarnock are 2-0 up in Ross County. It's Motherwell 1, Dundee United 2. Fletcher has given United the lead in that match. St Johnstone 1, Livingston 0. Dundee United would need to score an absolute barload of goals to avoid the automatic relegation, and I think they could be heading down that trapdoor by the time we go off air. Yesterday, Celtic 5, Aberdeen 0. I was at the Edinburgh Derby. Good football? Absolutely not. It was an absolute shambles of a game because, quite simply, you were struggling at some points to actually witness 3 or 4 passes in the match. It was poor on quality, but as an Edinburgh Derby with something at stake, Oda scored a good goal for Hearts, and then in the 26th minute, the game just turned on VAR. Really, Don Robertson had a wee look. Chris Cadden was upended by Alec Cochrane. He pointed to the penalty spot, then went to VAR, changed his mind, made it a free kick, and sent Alec Cochrane off. And then Nesbitt walks up, bang, hits the ball into the back of the net. Now at that point, I thought to myself, okay, it's 1-1. Hibs have got a great support there. They're going to have a real go, but it just didn't materialise. They had Hanlon with a header that was produced a good save from Xander Clark, and then I think Fish had a header which was deflected onto the post. But you were thinking, charge of the light brigade here, leave 2 at the back and just keep going and try and get it. You'd be as well going down 3-1, 4-1 than a draw.
You got an hour against 10 men, and you must win. So the equation looks pretty easy for me. I think it shows as well, people have been talking up Hibs' quality, particularly in the final third, particularly up front. Ewan's come on to a game. We know the quality in his, but at the right time for them, they just didn't produce, did they?
No, they didn't produce, and of course at the end of the game, once it all petered out, suddenly you could sense that there was more action. Honestly, there was more action on the touchline with Stevie Naismith, as you know, contests everything. I mean, I'm sure he contests tiddlywink, Stevie, and he was arguing with the referee, fourth official. Lee Johnson, as ever, you know, up there biting the fourth official, and I thought to myself, this has got all the makings of something's going to kick off here, you know. And Hearts, by the way, from the 26th minute, they played for long periods with 10 men. So it was one of those situations. I think we've got a penalty for Ross County. I'll keep you up to date with that, and whether they can get the goal back, whether that's going to be enough or not, I have my doubts. I think Killie have done more than enough on that one. We'll keep you up to date with it. But in the end, it all kicked off. I think 4 other players and backroom staff get sent off. There was 4 other red cards, so in the end we had 5 red cards in a match that really, the best part of it was the flashpoint at the end. The quality of football was absolutely dire. It would get football stopped if you were actually putting that across the world. But it finished 1-1. Hearts finished 4th. The home support were delighted, and then of course it all kicked off. But the most important thing at the end of the game, Stephen McLean's got a job on a 3-year deal, Jim Goodwin's got a job on a 2-year deal, and I asked Stevie Naismith if he was ready to become the Hearts manager on a permanent deal.
What this has done is given me a taste of it, and I know I'm ready. I think I've shown that these are the 5 hardest fixtures you're getting in the season at a time where the squad's really low, and I'm proud of what we've done. So yeah, I'm ready for it. The conversations will now start to see whether I'm the man to take Hearts forward or not, but I'm looking forward to the conversations.
I hope he gets it, Hugh.
I think he might as well.
Yeah.
I think you know, they can look at it. There's obviously been a sense of nurturing him there to be a manager at one point. Maybe it's come a bit too soon. It is apparently, by the way, for Ross County, and
Danda is the man who's going to get a chance to get them a goal back, but it's going to be a tall order to try and get more than a few back. He has scored. Yeah, Stevie Naismith, I think Hearts are one of those clubs with a board that's sensible, a lot of good people in there. I like the way they run like a family club, and I think Naismith is, as a player, he was well appreciated there for his contribution to Hearts in the latter part of his career, and I think he's got the qualities. When are you ever ready to become a manager, and when do you start paying big top dollar for managers that are, you know?
Well, this is it. I mean, you know, we know the road that Hearts have been down in the past, and they've made some very poor managerial appointments in the past, or ones that just didn't work out. Ones that, you know, certainly contributed to their demise and going down to the Championship. What Stephen Naismith will be saying, and you already alluded to it in that clip, is I'm ready now. I've been coaching with Steve Clark, one of the best coaches, and I think this would be right, one of the best coaches in the game. Yeah,
Martin Weir says, would you pick Naismith over a tried and tested manager? Well, you know, Martin, a tried and tested manager costs a bit of money. And I don't think the Scottish football's got money, and I don't think Hearts have got the money to pay top drawer for a tried and tested manager. And who is a tried and tested manager? Is it a Chris Wilder?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, and I don't know how much Chris Wilder, I mean, Chris Wilder made a lot of money in his career, so you know, I don't know how much he would take just to come to Hearts. You know, it's certainly an interesting one, but I think you've got you got to look at it and say, well, tried and tested managers sometimes don't what's the word for it, they're not certainties.
No.
You know what I mean? You could be going for what we could call a tried and tested manager and work out, oh goodness gracious, that's not the place we should be. And I think what Stephen will be, you know, saying, right, if I'm not ready now, I'm never ready. I've had a couple of years with Scotland. I've been running the B team. I've been learning off people.
Yep.
I've got 18 years in top class football playing.
And worked under a few good managers.
Well, you go back to Well, he's worked under, right off the top of my head, he's worked under Martinez, Walter Smith, and that's Daniel Farke worked at Norwich.
Yep.
So he's had a few top managers, and I know, and we know because we know him, the amount of research and studying and notes that he's taken throughout his career. So I've got a feeling that they will go for him.
Yeah, so do I. I hope he gets the job. I like Stevie Naismith, not just because he was here for a couple of years. I've known him for a long time, and I think he's a sensible boy, and I think he's got a lot of good ideas, fresh ideas. And of course he wants Hearts to play in the front foot. I wanted anybody to play in the front foot yesterday, to be perfectly honest with you. Brian Haig says, give Naismith the job. He picked the team up when they were down, so give him a season to see how things go. I think you're absolutely right, Brian. I think they were going stale. I think the Hearts fans, I think there was a real sense I got from the Hearts fans that they were not waiting for him to fall by the wayside, but there were some who just were never going to like Robbie Neilson, and when eventually he gave them enough rope to hang him, boy did they hang him, they wanted him out the door. So, Robbie Neilson will go and look for another job and pop his head up at some point elsewhere, but now Stevie Naismith, I do hope that he looks for maybe a wee bit of experience to help him out in the background as well, but he's certainly, I think, ready to be given the job. If Stephen McLean in Scottish football is ready for it and Jim Goodwin's getting the job at Dundee United, no reason why you shouldn't look towards him. What about Hibs? I thought they were poor yesterday as well, didn't really offer anything. The two teams were poor, but the one element of this that I think is critical for Hibs is hoping Celtic defeat Inverness Cally Thistle in the Scottish Cup final, because that will allow Hibs to go into Europe as well, an opportunity to try and get themselves a nice little kitty of money if they could get group stage football. Lee Johnson is looking forward to, I think this is transfer window number 4. I laughed when I thought he was asking for 5 transfer windows, but he's got a real sense of there's more to do at Easter Road.
I will make changes over the summer, without question of a doubt. There will be ins and outs. I'm not finished. We're not finished, and everything's looking up really. Even the points tally in the top 6 has been good. Felt we should have beat Aberdeen, which potentially could have been 2 more points. So there's a summer to build that sort of 30%, if you like, within the squad that we're after, a bit more quality, like changing dynamic a little bit, freshen the group up. And then we go again. It's a short summer, which is a good thing. We need Celtic to obviously do us a favour, because we want to be in that European competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to be supporting Celtic. Lee Johnson. There's something really, I know it sounds strange to say this, there's something really likeable about him, although he does talk in riddles sometimes. I often get into press conferences with managers and I think to myself, I'm treating anything that you say with a little bit of suspicion, contempt, disregard some of the nonsense they talk, but there's something likeable about him.
And he's bang on about what the summer needs, because I don't think there's any area of the team that's sacrosanct. I don't think he's got any of the team where you can say, well, I've got that bang on, because I think defensively they're not convincing, and they've got older heads there. Darren McGregor's away, so they've got older heads there that they need replaced. I mean, Lewis Stevenson and Hanlon are not getting any younger, for example. Midfield is probably the strongest area. They've got some guile and some strength there, but probably need a bit more. And up front's a big conundrum, because Martin Boyle coming back, Ewan's been, I think it's fair to say Ewan's come on strong in the second half of the season, but Nisbet will have to be replaced as well. Yeah, absolutely. A goal for St Johnstone from the penalty spot, so that's 2-0 to them. Chris Kane has scored from 12 yards, penalty there, converted 2-0 up St Johnstone. It's not a great game, as Patrick Mullen has mentioned, and of course Livingston will finish off, it looks, with a possible defeat ahead of their Player of the Year dinner tonight. It's always difficult if you're hosting a Player of the Year dinner and you've just been cuffed in the final game of the season, so I'm sure you'll be very gentle, Peter. You're renowned.
Yeah.
You're renowned for your tact and diplomacy in times of stress.
Yeah, I'll mention I'll mention it briefly, and then we'll move on. I think Motherwell have got an equaliser in the match against Dundee United. So it looks as if Spittle has equalised for them 2-2. Listen, we never thought it was on anyway. At least Kerry's getting a goals fest.
That's right, and one of my famous goal fest was at Fir Park as well.
Yes, were you there as well? I was there at 6-6. Were you there?
It was my birthday, believe it or not. May the 5th it was.
Yeah, at Fir Park at that period, I think over a 5-10 year period, it also had a 6-5 against Aberdeen.
They did, aye.
Yeah.
The great quote about the 6 each was Craig Brown's after the match, where when he was asked to explain it all, and he said, that Archie Knox was his number 2 at the time, and he said, how do you explain that, Craig? And he said, well, I coached the attack and Archie coached our defence. So that was it. Yeah, I remember, I can actually vividly, it's one of the great games I've been at in all my life, because I always remember, the press box where we were sitting that day.
Yeah.
Jukovic's shot. You just
looked
right down the barrel of it. You looked down the barrel of it. And seeing it was coming, you knew that's what he was going to try and do. You just knew it.
Yeah. Well, at 6-5 with minutes to go, you might as well try a haymaker.
And what a goal.
Or as they say in American football, a Hail Mary.
Hail Mary,
and if it comes off, then, yahoo. Killie 2, Ross County 1. That's the crucial game that means something, because obviously Ross County want to try and get the win in that game and avoid the playoff, and Chris Doolan is there because he's clearly looking and saying, okay, I'm going to be playing one of these two sides, looks like Ross County, I'll see where their weaknesses are. And by the way, the amount of people who've actually are messaging us here and saying, Sean says, Peter, ask Hugh his thoughts on Dortmund. The Bottlers, what about it, Hugh? German football, you're a big Dortmund fan, and they blew it big time.
Devastated, Peter. Yeah. It was. Do you know who people say it's not your first team and all that, but the amount of time and effort and all that they put in it. And see, the thing that was really devastating about it was it wasn't unexpected. And for people to say, oh, how was it not expected? I'll tell you what, I'd offered to go through I'm a member of the Edinburgh Borussian Supporters Club. And the people that didn't have, there was a big contingent of Edinburgh and boys away to the game yesterday, and everybody else was going to Footlights for a pint. And I said to my son, I fear the worst, I'm not coming. I said, I don't want to go away through Edinburgh and watch us. I said, so I sat in the park, Peter, and read my book and tried to get away from it. The problem with Dortmund, if anybody is completely interested, but it shows a wider thing in sport, that you can have all the talent, you can have all the technique, all the coach in the world, but you have to have the will. And Dortmund, the culture at Dortmund is one of accepting second best, of accepting defeat, and that's the culture, and it's been the culture for a long time. I would say it's been the culture since Klopp left.
Yes. Yeah,
as long as even under Tuchel, he had to try and get them over the line. And what that team, it was a very poor Bundesliga, but the amount of points won was much less than years, and that was a Bayern team that was really struggling.
And the funny thing is, Hugh, when you look at it, I mean, we're sometimes insular in our thinking here in Scotland about the dominance of, for example, Celtic, who have, if you look since 2000, have absolutely dominated the Scottish game. I think Rangers have managed 6 titles out of the 23.
Yep.
Celtic have been so dominant. Bayern Munich, 11 years they've won that title.
Yep, and the metrics say they should win the title given the budget they've got in comparison to other teams. But this was an absolute nailed-on chance for Dortmund. Nailed to beat Mainz at home. A Mainz team that had nothing to play for, to win the Bundesliga. You couldn't get any better than that. But Peter, this is a team that Stuttgart, they played Stuttgart, Dortmund, and Stuttgart went down to 10 men, and Dortmund ended up losing 3-1 to 10 men. I mean, that wasn't the final score, but if you took it, when they managed to lose to Bremen when they were winning 2-1, they've dropped big points and poor performances all over the shop, so yesterday wasn't a surprise, but See, the thing that gets me as well is that the scenes on the television I watched later, the players went over to the fans, and that terrific support in the yellow wall, the Sud Tribune as they call it, they're all giving them a standing ovation. And I'm going,
I'd be giving them pelters.
Well, I would be saying to myself, no, you're not getting a standing ovation for me.
Yeah, I can tell you the games are kicking off in England as well, Hugh, which is going to be really interesting because Harry Kane has scored for Tottenham Hotspur. Leeds United 0, Tottenham 1, and I've got Leeds and Leicester going down in the English Premier League. I think Everton will escape.
I think it'll just escape as well. I'm on board with that as well. Yeah. I think Leeds and Leicester, and then Leicester have just made an absolute clod of it this year.
Yep, absolutely. And the other thing as well, Hugh, when you're talking about a couple of things I want to get your thoughts on, but we'll keep you up to date with all the goals that hit the back of the net in the English Premier League as well as full time from the 3 games today in Scotland. We'll have managers and players' reaction to that. We have heard from Ange Postecoglou. We're going to hear from Michael Beale shortly on that 3-0 win yesterday after obviously discussing Hearts and Hibs. It was St Mirren 0, Rangers 3. We'll hear from Michael Beale shortly. But West Ham United are in the final of the Europa Conference, and I've managed to get my flights. And the gaffer has got me a ticket, so I'm going to the Europa Conference final. Done. West Ham against Fiorentina.
Where are you staying? Are you staying in the Old Town? Or you?
Well, I am staying in a hotel along with most of the Moyes family. We're going to go and enjoy it. It's going to be great.
Oh, you'll love it. I mean, because you might have the last few times you've been in Seville, I know you've been really busy with business. It's a terrific city just to have a wander down by that.
Arrive on the Monday, leave on the Thursday, Hugh. I've got 4 days on.
Well, that walk down to the Triano district, across the walk through the Old Town, I'm really delighted for David Moyes because he's been under severe pressure all year, and he's managed to keep the 2 balls in the air. He's kept them in the Premiership, which is the Premier League, which is literally what it's all about if you're West Ham. And he's gone to a European. I mean, that's terrific. Another Scottish manager in a European final. Can't he whack it?
And I'd love to see him win it. It'd be brilliant for him as well. Sean Barlow says, Peter and Hugh, do you think Livingston will struggle next season? The past few weeks, David Martindale has been talking about struggling to recruit players, and of course, players knocking back new contracts. Well, listen, I don't think I'm going to be wide of the mark when I tell you that although David Martindale has mentioned that he's struggling to sign various players, I think actually Kilmarnock Vassell has scored to make it 3-1 now, so County will play Thistle in the playoff. But I can tell you that from a Livingston point of view, I think they're going to announce on Monday the signing of one of the first signing of the new season for next season. There'll be a centre half coming in, if that helps you along. So there you are.
Well, with Virgil van Dijk on board, they've got a good chance next season.
Can you imagine? They don't have a strong fan base. David Martindale's worked wonders for them. He's got to try and duck and dive and get some people over the line. He's trying to coax some players that you think they'll never be able to get. He's got one that I think is a good player if he can steer clear of injury. So he started his recruitment process.
Well, what he does every year, when people say, how do you think they go on next year? I'll say it the way I say it every year. I always think they'll go down because football's got a metric which is really reliable, and it means that the teams with the smallest budgets are the teams that are in big trouble. He's defied that, David Martindale, almost himself. I mean, I know he's the players are the ones that you praise, but his recruitment, his discipline, his game management, his strategy, and of course, it helps by playing on a part that suits your players more than that suits visiting players. He's done. He's completely and utterly outperformed. But every season for him is a challenge because you've not got the money that other clubs have got.
Yeah, there's a goal down south as well in the English Premier League, and it's Aston Villa 1, Brighton 0. Douglas Luiz who scored that goal for Villa. Unai Emery, top drawer coach, and he's done wonders down there, hasn't he?
I know, but the level of punditry when Emery went in, you know, you just weep salt tears. People say, "Oh, he didn't do well at Arsenal." I thought he did okay at Arsenal, but Arsenal was a difficult game.
Basket case at the time.
Case. Just look what he's done everywhere else. The guy, there is no guarantees in football that a coach is going to work at a particular club. There's none. But there's real strong hints.
By the way, you know, if I was Villa, I'd be checking out where the European final is, because
he's the ninja, isn't he?
He is the man who knows how to deliver a European trophy.
What they've taken, I mean, taken the position. What could they finish? What, 7th, 6th?
Yes.
I mean, this was a team that were trembling at the beginning of the season. They were going to think they're going to get sucked into relegation.
Exactly, Hugh. And there's a goal for Newcastle United. Gordon, who I have to say, Chelsea 0, Newcastle 1. Frank Lampard has had an absolute nightmare as far as being the manager of Chelsea's second time around. Gordon, I don't think is worth 45 million, with all due respect to 45 million pound players. If you think Haaland went for 5 million pound more, everybody's in the shade when it comes to Haaland, but Gordon, for me, 45 million from Everton is everything that's wrong with the English Premier League's transfer system.
Well, there is this kind of almost premium in transfers between two English clubs.
Yes.
So Gordon got that. What's in his favour is he's young.
Yes.
There was that period. I think he's a good player, and I think he's a creative player. But there have obviously already been difficulties with him at Newcastle. You know, how he's been in times very strong in his criticism of the boy's attitude, and that. It's good to see he's back in the team and doing well. But 45 million, well, what is that now? You know, it's lost all kind of, lost all bearing for it.
It'll be interesting to see the calibre of player that Newcastle buy in the summer, and let's see where Gordon ends up. You and I will beg to differ on this one. Southampton 0, Liverpool 1. Jota has scored for Liverpool in that game, and I'll tell you right now, if we're looking at Liverpool, I'm curious to see how Klopp rebuilds that side for the new season. It doesn't look as if he's going to get Jude Bellingham. It looks as if Real Madrid are in the box seat there. I can tell you Arsenal are a goal up in Wolves. So it's Granit Xhaka. That's what I call the Lazarus man, because he looked as if he was dead and buried as an Arsenal player, but he's come back to the forefront of that starting 11, and he scored there in that match. And I can tell you there's a goal for Motherwell, 3-2 now against Dundee United. Max Johnson could be his farewell. The goal for Max Johnson for Motherwell. So 3-2. And
Dundee United need a try, a converted try.
They need snookers, to be fair. Now, I mean, listen, Dundee United know they've got a rebuilding job. Jim Goodwin's the man. They are trying to do it. I hope he decides who he wants to sign. If he doesn't, you know, I just see more misery for United fans in that division.
Yeah, and really it has to be, given what we know in United's finances, well, it has to be a bounce back season. They can't linger in the Championship.
Yeah, Rabi, who I'm going to read this out just because we're in that kind of a end of season mode. I don't care who's kicking us where it hurts. Rabi says, Peter, who's the better kisser, David Martindale or David Moyes? That's brilliant. By the way, Rabi, if you do get a chance, I would advise you to actually watch your documentary, My Story, David Martindale, because he gave us access that was absolutely fantastic. We're going to get a real good insight into what it's like for a Premiership manager and the pressures and the job and everything that it entails. It was first class getting an insight to him.
I thoroughly enjoyed that one, and I interviewed him as well this season, and was after he was on this show. Actually, he was so good in the show, so open and honest and insightful. I felt, I'll go along with Peter on the two David Kissers, you know. But I think with Moyes though, you can. I think you really have to be just so praiseworthy of what he's done at West Ham, changed the culture there.
Absolutely. Hugh, if he'd a better chief executive at Manchester United, he might still be there. Ed Woodward was an absolute monumental disaster.
Yeah, and the other thing, well, he never got any signings over the line for him. So,
Fellaini at the 12th hour,
and all the signings that he went on to be successes at other clubs. Manchester United was one of those jobs that, when you look back, it should be in business books. Don't take the job after the legend. Take the job after somebody takes the job after the legend.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Hugh. See, when you think of people who've actually followed managers who've been absolute legends at clubs, and it's difficult to work out. I mean, I would counter that by suggesting to you, let's think about it. Who followed Graham Souness? Walter Smith came in, and Walter was brilliant for Rangers. Billy McNeill followed Jock Stein.
Yep.
And then after Bill Shankly, it was Bob Paisley. So there are situations where you can build on the success of a manager.
Isn't it in that conversation, isn't it remarkable? Everyone you mentioned had already really been in the building at the time, so there was a continuation, or in Billy's case, knew the club inside out. Shankly passing over to Paisley. Paisley didn't change that much at all. Changed little things, and then did the same and passed it on to Fagan, who had a very brief spell, Joe Fagan, but he
still won. Liverpool have scored 2-0 now for Liverpool. Brian says, who's for the cull at PLZ? You've got to. Honestly, Ruffy's on a shaky peg, isn't he? He's got to be McManus. Annoying to say the least.
I think as well as I wouldn't say I may be looking for a new club in the summer, like an over 55, no, over 65 walking team then, Peter, and I may be for the cull.
Hugh, when I think of when we started this godforsaken company, if it hadn't have been for you, I'd have been off the edge of the cliff, constantly arguing with Ruffy. But 10 years has been absolutely incredible. When many people thought we would falter, but we've managed to battle on.
The great thing about this place is for a man of a certain age, is the way everything just changes and grows. And I mean, now we're getting the one-to-ones. Now we're getting the news channel, which can go on every day. You're getting people out at grounds giving us updates. Really talented young people like Kerry, Patrick, even Adam, yes.
Yep.
Talented young people, talented people behind the scenes. The place is, I've been buoyed by it in the later years.
Well, it's not only that, Hugh, but you started out when Ruffy laughed, the whole set moved.
It was three of us in a box. One of us, it was like, I was expecting to see Terry Waite chained to a radiator.
It was like that, I must admit. It was mental. But thank you, William Smith says, it's a great show, Peter, great staff, hats off to you. Well, listen, the other thing about it is, and I always actually mention it to so many people, we'll give you an opinion. Sometimes, you can absolutely, think that people are a pain in the back end. That's brilliant. That's the nature of it. We'll offer you an opinion. Some you like, some you don't. And at the end of the day, I always say to people, are you offended by people that don't like you? Well, no, I've got a family of 10. I don't care. I've learned to get a thick skin.
Does it for you anyway?
Absolutely, because somebody says to me, is there ever any time when somebody offends you? And I said, listen, you can have a go at me, you'll need a baseball bat to break down the outer shield on this one. And everybody that's come on, Tam Cowan, yourself, McManus, Barry Ferguson was a great lad for us as well, Richard Foster, Stevie Naismith, and the one-to-ones and the access we've got is just basically because you build up that trust, and we try and do that, and we've certainly emerged as a brand that people are well aware of in Scotland. That's for certain. We're going to try and make it bigger and bigger and better year in, year out. The other thing I was going to ask you, Hugh, as we look at the scores here, I can tell you right now, it's Killy 3-1 up in Ross County, so Ross County are in the playoff. Killy are staying in the Premiership, which is great credit to Derek McInnes. Motherwell 3, Dundee United 2. Dundee United are going down. St Johnstone 2, Livingston 0. Both of them will be in the Premiership next season. Congratulations to Celtic women. They won the Scottish Cup today, defeating Rangers by 2-0. Tonight, as well as some Player of the Year dinners across the Scottish Premiership, there is, of course, the Scottish Football Writers Association dinner, where they will honour Ange Postecoglou as Manager of the Year, Player of the Year Kyogo, International Player of the Year John McGinn. Is it John McGinn?
Yep.
I think it is John McGinn.
Yeah, for the fourth time.
Yeah. Have I missed anybody else? There's a few other awards that will get handed out.
The Women's Player of the Year is Caitlin from Celtic, isn't it?
Caitlin Hayes, yep.
What else is there?
Young players, Max Johnson.
Yep.
So it's a really good mix, and they always, I like the writers do as well. It's the first time I'm actually going to miss it in about 15 years, Hugh. You know that way you accept a gig and you forgot to check your dates. It's the only night, by the way, Hugh, I have to hold my hands up. You know what I'm like, I'm a toucan Dan. It's the only night that I, apart from the PFA at the tail end of it when I've finished the job, but it's the only night where I don't take the car and I have a right good night with my mates. And my own stupidity.
Come along later.
I'm going to come along later, but I'll not be drinking, you know. But I'll certainly enjoy the crack with a few people that we've... I can't tell you, there's a goal in the Man United game as well, Hugh. Man United have really rallied coming back this season with Eric Ten Hag. They're a goal down to Fulham at the moment. So it's 1-0 to Fulham in that match.
There's another, you know, so many stories in the Premiership, but Fulham's been an excellent one. Mario Silva, the manager, has done so well there. They're now talking about keeping Willian on board. He's one of my favourite players, Peter. You know,
Willian?
I really like him.
Lost his way a wee bit at Chelsea, didn't he?
He lost his way at the end at Chelsea, did. And when I see favourite players, there's always a guy I like to watch on the park. You know, that kind of very clever movement and touch.
Where did he go before Fulham? He left Chelsea and went somewhere else. Did he go to Arsenal?
He had a terrible time there, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't think it worked out for him.
He did, because he had a terrible time there. But I always like him. I always liked him as a player. And Fulham's are tremendous. Everyone's got a chance. I know they're redeveloping it at the moment. Everyone's got a chance to go to Craven Cottage, take it. It's a nice wee ground to visit.
He went to Arsenal, 25. Craven Cottage, the only thing that I always think about when I think about Craven Cottage, apart from the lovely little cottage that's there, which is unusually, I think it's a listed building at the side of the stadium, is how they all actually thought it was a good idea to put up a statue of Michael Jackson.
Marvellous. Replacing, and if you think that was a bad idea, replacing it with a statue of Philip Schofield, it was just outrageous. It's the last show. Who cares? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, far be it from us to chat about pertinent things that are going on in the press at the moment, but Michael Jackson was not a good idea. I can tell you it's full time at Fir Park. Motherwell 3, Dundee United 2. What a result that is for Motherwell to finish off. He didn't quite get the 30 goals, but he scored again in the 11th consecutive game. Van Veen's been unbelievable. I mean, and in the chat for Player of the Year, not my pick, but in the chat for it, did more than anybody could expected of him. Motherwell finishing a terrific season. Okay, didn't get top 6, but they walked away, strolled away from any relegation problems, mostly, you know, not say mostly down to him, but he's a significant contributor. And he's going to have an interesting couple of weeks, I think. Yeah. I think at his age, and will not be, don't have the do not disturb sign on.
I'd love to see him stay in Scotland, would you, Hugh?
Yeah. I would like to see him as well stay in Scotland, because there's a bit of quality about him as well, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Where would you like to see him? That's the big question. I have possibly, and some people might give me it in the neck here, but he's a really good player, and I think to myself, great, you know, he's scored those goals. Is he the level of player that Rangers should be looking at? I don't think so, personally. Not for me, and some people have been critical of me saying that. I'm analysing players and I'm thinking, what are Rangers' needs? Rangers' needs are past the 2 qualifiers into the group stages of the Champions League. You need that type of player, and then over and above that, you also need a calibre of player that can win the title. If anything, he'd be a squad player, whereas I think he would be a really good player at Aberdeen or Hibs or Hearts.
Exactly. I mean, I get pelters this time last season for saying that, you know, Colak wouldn't be good enough for Rangers, you know, and he scored a lot of goals for Rangers. But it's been proven that the managers at Rangers don't think he's good enough for Rangers because they didn't pick him in big games. You know, I know he had injuries, but they didn't pick him in big games. And I think that he's a player that may be moved on in the summer as well. And Rangers really need, you know, quality up front. I mean, Sakala's come on to a bit of a game and scoring goals, but I think he's better wide and coming in. So I think they really need a really top class 9.
Interestingly enough, though, when you look at Rangers, they get 92 points, which over the last 10 seasons they would have won the title 5 times with 92 points. And I think Michael Beale was appreciative of the efforts that the team put in.
We're just waiting for 1 or 2 things to be signed off, and then we'll start seeing a new Rangers team come together, albeit with a team that has got over 90 points this year, which we haven't. Someone else will tell me, but I don't think we've done that too often in the last 15, 20 years. When we have, we generally won the league. I think it's one of the highest points total. So, again, everything's broken at Rangers at the moment, so I'm looking forward to mending it, because that's the perception. I'm not sure that's quite true. I think we're the team that won the league this year deserved to win it in Celtic. They were the outstanding team, but our record was a strong one, and we're I believe, adding to an already good team.
Yeah, I think Michael Beale deserves. I mean, there are people who are dismissive of certain things that he says on a week-to-week basis, but I think Michael Beale deserves the time now to build his own team. I've always been of the opinion, Hugh, that regardless of what happened in the Old Firm games, that he deserved a chance to build his own side. And I think, you know, we'll see Michael Beale's Rangers team next season, and then, you know, you'll get to see the biggest job has been the board. They've got to back him. The next part after the board, if they back him, is, you know, try and get a higher percentage of players that work out who are in the team. Then it's got to be get past those qualifiers. Then there's a kitty there for him, and then when that window closes, he's got to have players that make sure that Rangers are in touch with Celtic September, October.
Yeah, I mean, the talk about deserves time, you'll not get it. You know, he's got to hit the ground running. You know, he's got to. I mean, I would agree that you would, you know, another couple of transfer windows, but you just had to see the noise even around Ange Postecoglou and after the split, losing a couple of games. You know, if Rangers go into, you know, worst case scenario, you know, a poor start to the season or whatever level, where you're not getting into the Champions League or losing a couple of domestic fixtures, the pressure's immense. You only need to talk to managers like Gordon Strachan and Walter Smith and that who've done it. You say, this is like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, how things, what was it Walter Smith always said, 2 games away from sacked?
Yeah, 2 games away from a crisis. Yeah, you're right. Kilmarnock have won the game 3-1 against Ross County, so Kilmarnock are safe. Congratulations to Derek McInnes. We will hear from the Killie boss before we go off air tonight. Malky Mackay has another match to try and plot safety for Ross County. 2 games against Partick Thistle, Hugh.
Yep, and Partick Thistle absolutely flying. 16 goals in the 2 ties against Queen's Park and Ayr United, on a really good run since they were knocked out of the Scottish Cup and dismissed Ian McCall. Thistle will be licking their lips as well at it. I always think though that the whole system lies in favour of the Premiership club, because that's the way it was set up.
Yeah.
But I think this is an interesting one this year. I'm not as sure about making Ross County as strong favourites as what would normally make them.
No, I agree with you. Thistle have got a right good chance, but I think the Kilmarnock fans are certainly appreciative of what Derek McInnes has managed to do to steer them to safety. Ross County fans are well aware that they live to fight another day. Can they beat Partick Thistle over 2 games? You can give us your thoughts on that. We'll hear from Malky Mackay as well. But it's Thistle and Ross County in the playoff. Dundee United are relegated. They lost to date to Motherwell by 3-2, and it's now really a case of Jim Goodwin, with that new 2-year deal announced as the permanent manager, trying to build his own side to get out of that championship, as Hugh mentioned. Paul Brady says, next season, Peter, will you have your participation in the predictor chart, and is Hugh going to take it seriously? Well, two questions. The first one is, we're going to have viewers in the predictor on the app, Hugh, which I think is going to be fantastic. We'll be offering prizes as well.
That'll be good. And the second answer is no, I'll not be taking it seriously.
Yes, which is one of the reasons why you'll be getting ditched from the predictor. But nevertheless, I think Ruffy's won it. I think he might have won it, Hugh. I'm looking and I'm saying to myself, it was double points this weekend, and as I looked down through all of the predictor points, I think even with double points, I don't think any of us can catch him. So he's going to have that. He's going to have that trophy, the big trophy this season. I look at the predictor that I had there, and I had for the bottom half of it, I had Kelly to win 2-1. They win 3-1. I had Motherwell to win 2-1. And then the other one, I had St Johnstone 2, Livingston 0. So I've got a fair few points, but not enough to catch him, I don't think.
Of course, he should obviously be disqualified anyway, because he actually gave one result after the game had started this season, and for some reason he got a free pass.
Yeah, he got away with it. I know, absolutely. I should have penalised him. Interestingly, one club that we haven't mentioned, I think deserve great credit as well, is St Mirren. It didn't go well for them after the split. I think Stephen Robinson was not so much apologetic, but understanding of the rigours of the season and the toll that it's taken on his squad.
Yes, we got punished for mistakes, and that's we all wanted to be in the top 6. This group of players have made history, and it's been a challenge. I think the squad, the season's caught up with the squad in general. Our injuries, our depth of squad has been tested to the limit. We looked at 3 debuts today, league debuts, because we have to look and see whether them boys are going to be part of the squad, they need to go on loan, or they're starters, and so that's a positive. I thought our shape was excellent at times, they didn't break us down, but we made 3 individual errors, and at this level, in the top 6 level, you get punished for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stephen Robinson, I'm a big fan of Stephen Robinson at St Mirren. Budget cut, had to try and get the best out of that squad, got them into the top 6. St Mirren, top 6. And even with that, I think he's a good man manager as well, Hugh.
And and he also just didn't do it by sort of putting everybody behind the ball. He had a good sort of enterprising team at times. They utilised Maine really well, and brought him into Mark O'Hara's a great season. I think they've had a terrific season, and I don't think what happened after the break, what happened in the split, it tarnishes that in the least.
No, absolutely not. I think he deserves great credit. So, Kilmarnock defeating Ross County with 3-1. Motherwell 3-2 against Dundee United. And for Park, we'll hear from Kerry Pollock shortly. We'll also hear from Adam Binney down there at Rugby Park, and up there at McDermott Park. I think Patrick Mullen will give us his assessment on St Johnstone's win over Livingston as well. That's how it's finished in the bottom half, and I can tell you that Celtic's women won the Scottish Cup final today by 2-0, and I think women's football is almost certainly on the up.
I think it's been a terrific season for Scottish women's football. We've watched and witnessed really big attendances. We've watched an absolutely sensational climax to the league season. There's challenges for Scottish women's football going forward, because I think ultimately marketing wise they've done a good job. They have to get more sponsors and that. But I think the players will be, to get a really good living from it, will have to go to other leagues. We see that already in the men's game, that there's been somewhat of a drain to other leagues. I think it was really pronounced in Scottish women's football.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, with it needs money. It also improves with the more women who are actually playing the game. We need more and more girls taking it up.
That's the real thing. I mean, that's the great thing about it at the moment, Peter, is that if you interviewed people before, you know, your Leanne Crichtons that worked here, or your Caroline Wears who's doing so well at Real Madrid, there was an element of their pathway was, you know, following Zinedine Zidane and looking at him. Now, girls like my granddaughter Tess, who's 6, she can look at the players playing like the Caroline Wears and say, well, that's a pathway. If she plays for Real Madrid, why can't I?
Yeah.
So that's an absolute game changer.
Yeah, absolutely it is, and long may it continue. The more and more you have in the player pool, the greater the chances of an increased percentage of them having a really good career. The more and more we have in Scotland, then some of them will be cherry-picked to the English game, some, luckily enough, like Caroline Weir, to the European game. But if we've got a greater clutch of players who are playing really good football, our game here will improve greatly as well. The more you have who play the game, the better chances you have, a greater percentage that we can retain here in Scotland. And that is the case very much in Scottish football, because as Michael Beale pointed out there, 92 points, 5 out of the last 10 seasons would have won Rangers the title. Let me be honest with you and brutal about it. You had 92 points, Hugh, to be perfectly honest with you, and Rangers deserve tremendous credit for that. The nearest after them was Aberdeen on 57, Hearts on 54, and then you've got Hibs on 52. That's woeful, and those teams couldn't lay a glove on Celtic and Rangers.
No, and haven't for the best part of 30 years. And won't be able to, certainly in the foreseeable future, unless there's a real game change in terms of finance, of moving leagues or whatever. We are, you know, in an era where there's every Premiership will start off with basically 2 leagues, the Celtic and Rangers League and the rest.
Yes. That's not good, Hugh.
It's a way of the world, though, Peter, in every league, every major league now. I mean, you look at, I honestly think that Man City at the moment, I don't know what price they win the Premier League next year, but it must be very short odds. Yeah. Who's going to challenge them? Man United, maybe under Ten Hag reformed. Klopp's got a huge building job to do.
I don't know how Europe contests English football, but there needs to be something to stop the like of Man City and Chelsea having 30 players out on loan, Hugh. It's not right. It's not the way ahead for football to have gifted footballers suddenly booted out on loan, they've been signed by them, and then they maybe be brought back. That's not the way ahead for the game. Cherry picking players who, you know, suddenly come down. Billy Gilmore went down to Chelsea, you know, gets 5 or 6 games under Frank Lampard, then not seen. Now he's at Brighton, not getting a regular game. Where does he go? He even went to Norwich on loan. You know, these are guys that you want to see playing 100, 150 games. We need to do something to change the structure. The whole of Europe is worried about the English Premier League.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've said this before, you know, people are talking about European Super League, you know, teams in Barcelona and Real Madrid will tell you there is already a European Super League. It just goes under the name of the EPL.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got Barcelona and Real Madrid complaining that they can't compete in terms of you know, TV revenues, etc., you know, there's a big problem. I think it goes even deeper than that, though, because I think what we are finding is that countries are being marginalised, not teams. And by that I mean Scotland, the Netherlands, all of Scandinavia and Portugal, and that's just off the top of my head, who all had teams that contested European Cup finals, and indeed won European Cups, though not in the case of Scandinavia, they only had one team that was in a European final, but that is now unthinkable.
Yeah, let's go to, first of all, full time at Rugby Park, because this one really had some meaning to it. Kilmarnock, Ross County, Adam Binney.
Full time here at Rugby Park. It has finished Kilmarnock 3, Ross County 1, and that means Kilmarnock are safe. They'll be playing another year in the Scottish Premiership. But for Ross County, that means they've finished in the dreaded 11th playoff position. So they'll have to play a relegation playoff two-legged tie against Partick Thistle next week. The home side, Killie, they got the advantage after just 34 minutes. That was the opening goal, and that came through Brad Lyons. Another little corner from Armstrong to the front post. There was Lyons to poke it high into the roof of the net. Armstrong then extended the advantage to 2 goals, and he got his own goal from the penalty spot just early into the second half. But then Ross County pulled one back also from the penalty spot after a long VAR deliberation. It was Kyle Vassell that sealed it for the home side to make it 3-1. He had a first attempt blocked on his right foot, a left-footed attempt, and subsequently also blocked. The ball spun up into the air, and at the third time of asking, he headed it far into the goal, well beyond Ross Laidlaw, to give Super Kelly the advantage. You can hear it all around me, the fans absolutely loving this one. You know what it means to the club, what it means to Derek McInnes, and all of the players will be playing another year of football in Scotland's top flight, but it's a long journey home up the A9 for the Staggies, who have to rejuvenate themselves ahead of that relegation playoff tie against Partick Thistle next week. It's finished here in Ayrshire. Kilmarnock 3, Ross County 1.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant from Adam there, and great credit to Derek McInnes. In the end, they got the job done.
Yeah, and that's a tremendous season for Derek McInnes. It really is. I mean, they got to a semi-final of a cup, and they maintained their Premiership status. When I thought at the beginning of the season, you know, I don't know if I tipped them to go down, but I wouldn't be surprised if I did. You know, I thought they would really struggle. So he's kept them in the league. No need for playoffs, etc. He can build in the summer now. He can sit down with the board and say, right, what he needs is like what most bottom 6 clubs needs. And they need goal scorers, and they're the most difficult to find.
Well, absolutely. If you've got someone suddenly who's not playing for the top 2 and can hit 20, 25 goals like a Shanklin, a Van Veen, then you are looking at top 6. You're not worrying about fighting off relegation. So full marks to Kilmarnock. I tipped St Johnstone, so what do I know? They managed to steer clear eventually, with Stephen McLean now getting the job on a full-time basis with a 3-year deal. What about Fir Park? Dundee United relegated. Kerry Pollock watched it.
Full time here at Fir Park, and it's Motherwell 3, Dundee United 2. The Dundee United players looking absolutely devastated on the pitch at full time, as they'll be relegated to the Championship next season. But unlucky for Van Veen, he didn't hit that 30-goal mark, but what a servant to Motherwell he's been this season. He got the scoring underway in the first 10 minutes as they took it round. Jack Newman to slot it comfortably into the back of the net to open the scoring this afternoon. Dundee United then got their equaliser through Jimmy McGrath from the penalty spot. It was a handball from Bevis McGavie. The striker stepped up and put it past Liam Kelly to level up the scoreline in the second half. It was Peter Pollitt that drove down the channel, squared it off to Stephen Fletcher, who was waiting in the centre of goal as he side-footed it into the back of the net to put United ahead. Then Blair Spittle come off the Motherwell bench to get the equaliser for Motherwell this time with a beautiful strike into the back of the net. And then finally Max Johnson, he did get the ball in the back of the net from a header just 10 minutes beforehand, but it was called for offside, and then 10 minutes later he replicated exactly what he did, making sure he was most definitely onside this time. A beautiful header into the back of the net, getting the winning goal for his side on the final day of the season. I'll get the reactions from both managers very shortly. It finishes here at Fir Park. It's Motherwell 3, Dundee United 2.
Goals fest for Kerry. She's been absolutely brilliant this season alongside Adam, and of course one of our mainstays as well, Patrick Mullen. He had a rank rotten first 45 minutes. Did it any better for him in the second half of that match between St Johnstone up at McDermott Park? Let's find out.
Full time here at McDermott Park, and it's finished. St Johnstone 2, Livingston 0. They took the lead in just the 17th minute after a long header up by Ryan McGowan flew over the heads of the Livingston defenders, and there was Dre Wright who slotted the ball home under the legs of the Livingston goalkeeper. They doubled the lead in the 63rd minute, went from the penalty spot when Chris Kane stepped up and coolly slotted the ball home into the bottom right hand corner. It was a fitting end to this game when Murray Davison came on for the final time in his career after 14 years here at St Johnstone. The whole crowd was on their feet singing his name. A fitting end to a fabulous career for him. A disappointing day for David Martindale, but Stephen McLean will be buzzing with his first victory as permanent manager of St Johnstone. But at full time for the end of the season, it has finished. St Johnstone 2, Livingston 0.
I've enjoyed Patrick because he's even made one of the, he was possibly, I think, a couple of the contenders for the worst games of the season, and he made them sound as if they were Champions League finals.
It's an art.
It really is an art. To sound enthusiastic about a game that's ranked rotten deserves great credit.
Good on him. Good on him. A great addition to the team as well.
Yep, absolutely. The three of them have been absolutely superb, with Ali Graham and of course Alison McConnell and Claire Kinnaird up there watching Dundee United. It's been actually a season of penance for Claire up there. She's done really well, giving us not only the insight into the manager and players at the press conference, but of course covering United at Tannadice and elsewhere on the road. Big thank you to all our reporters and all our team behind the scenes as well, and Cheryl, Blair, Sean, of course Gordon, and I think, have I got everybody in there?
I think so,
yeah, I think I've got them.
Anne.
I got Anne in. Absolutely fantastic. The whole team in the background as well, who've made it all possible for us. A lot of people asking, what's the story for the last programme of the season? On Friday we'll do a Scottish Cup final preview, and then we're going to have a little break, and then obviously when you get to a summer break, we assess things, we'll look at the programming that we want to bring on. We've got lots more content. We've got lots more content from people who've been with us for a long time. We've got lots more content from people who'll be joining us for the first time, because we always like to make signings and try and make PLZ Soccer bigger and better. And when you look back over the course of the season, I think we can be very, very proud of the content that we've delivered. We're taking on the big guns. I feel very much like a manager who's saying we're really fighting and punching above our weight against big guns with vast amounts of money, and some of those big guns don't spend as much money as they should on promoting Scottish football, and we certainly try and utilise every penny we've got to do that, Hugh.
And there's a commitment to Scottish football here as well. As again, you can disagree with us, and of course that is welcomed as well, but what you can't argue with is the time, the effort, the commitment and the belief that goes into making these programmes.
Yeah, David Martindale was one of them. John McMaster, reflecting in 40 years since Gothenburg. Alex McLeish looked back on that run to Gothenburg and of course defeating Real Madrid, which was fantastic for us. Scott Brown, as he embarks on his management career at Fleetwood, and we got you a one-to-one there. Neil Lennon talking about his time at Ammonia Nicosia. Very honest interview with him, and I think over the course of the season we certainly have enjoyed bringing you unique one-to-ones, lots of great content, and our reporters out at the games as well, and we're going to try and make it even more entertaining for you next season with more than a few signings, so hopefully you're going to stick with us. I think Martin Weir makes a very good point. The only downside to it all has been Tam's hairstyle. McManus has from time to time had ridiculous hairstyles. He's also basically gone on Twitter and made some outrageous statements and then ran away as if he was fighting out in the street and saying, my uncle will batter you, I'm running away. That's the way he's adopted his whole outlook.
We've sent him off to Martin, though. We've sent him off to America, and we very much hope that that'll solve the haircut problem.
You know he played in America, don't you?
Oh yes, he used to
Colorado Rapids, and a few others that he went into liquidation and folded. We'll hear from the managers coming up very shortly. We have heard from Michael Beale, Ange Postecoglou, Stevie Naismith. We've heard from Lee Johnson as well as Stephen Robinson. We'll hear from Derek McInnes on Kilmarnock staying in the Scottish Premiership. We'll also hear from Malky Mackay as he has to try and plot an escape route for Ross County now in the playoffs against Partick Thistle. And we will hear from the Motherwell manager Stuart Kettlewell, because let's not forget he came in at a time when Motherwell looked as if they were heading towards the trapdoor, steadied the ship and then some, and he's pointed out that the points that Motherwell have accrued is up there with Celtic and Rangers since he took over.
Yeah, there's a wee flaw in that, and that he's been playing in the bottom six.
Yeah, a minor flaw, but let's not,
But he's done very well, and he's another club with a three manager season, his remit was to get Motherwell out any sticky problems. He's done that with something to spare. A good season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you there's a little twist going on at the moment. I have to tell you. Now, Leeds are a goal down to Tottenham. Elsewhere, Everton have got to try and beat Bournemouth to make sure they stay in the division, Hugh. So it's going to be a little bit harum-scarum in the English Premier League. Leicester have gone a goal up against West Ham, and now that means Everton have dropped into the relegation position, and they are one of those clubs who they've been in the Premiership since it started.
Yep, and a side of European pedigree. We can remember them playing in the Winners' Cup, of course. The season they won the championship was the title was the season, of course. Afterwards, they were banned. These clubs were banned.
And you wouldn't have bet against them winning a European Cup. They had such a good side.
Oh, they had extraordinary.
Trevor Steven, Andy Gray,
Graham Sharp, Ratcliffe at the back, Southall in goal.
Yep.
I mean, they're the top-notch team, but they're under the cosh as well. It always takes me back to that season, Peter. I can't remember the exact date of the season. Remember they played Wimbledon?
Yeah, well, Joe Royle was the manager.
Yeah.
Kept him in by the skin of their teeth. And I think they've got all sorts of legends there today. I know Peter Reid is hoping they can escape. He's in the crowd as well. Joe Royle's actually there as well. He was a good Evertonian as a player as well, as a number 9.
He was an outstanding player, Joe Royle. Very much I would say best thing, Shearer of his day.
Yeah.
Big, strong, talented. Not obviously quite at Shearer's level, Alan Shearer's level, but not far behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great days. Recalling some of the great players in the 60s and 70s that Everton had, but it's changed days now, and I have to tell you, having been in Liverpool and driven past that stadium, that will be a huge financial burden around their neck if they are in the Championship, Hugh. They have got to try and get a goal to defeat Bournemouth.
Well, there's two problems. The first problem is the rising cost of that stadium, which will hurtle, most people hurtle towards $1 billion.
Yeah.
And then if you're stripped of the Premier League's merchandising and broadcasting deal, and all those parachute payments, it becomes very difficult. And the second problem, a great save there, is just denied them. The second problem is getting out of that Championship.
Yeah, which is a nightmare. Tommy says that I'm living in Germany and PLZ keeps me sane. Thank you for that, Tommy. It's very, very nice of you to say that, because obviously the one thing that really has been a prominent feature throughout the whole season has been people, expats from all across the globe mentioning they watch PLZ Soccer. It keeps them right up to date with what's happening. They enjoy the programmes, and I think we are absolutely delighted that people listen to the podcast, they watch it on YouTube, they can get it on the app as well. I think that's the key to it all. Sometimes, they always say absence makes the heart grow fonder, but if you've got somebody sitting on a couch with 3 or 4 guys, the same accent, the way you were brought up, you can have a right good laugh, and it just brings you closer to home.
And concentrating stuff that means something to you, because the coverage of other leagues is huge and almost overwhelming. You'll get news about the English Premier League, if you were sitting in a canoe in the middle of the Amazon. But sometimes Scottish football is maybe a bit more difficult to access it. So and the great thing about this, Peter, people don't just watch it live. There's people that have their routines, watch it at 9 o'clock at night and watch it when they come in from their work or whatever. So it's when you've got that subscribe button, you can just go onto it whenever you want and just press play.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all the compliments that we have. And thank you, by the way, as well. We get criticism. That's part and parcel. We'll take it all on board, to be perfectly honest with you. And of course, we try and read out as many of your opinions as possible. And every now and then, as I make no bones about it, and certainly wouldn't apologise for it, every now and then we scalp people who don't have any morals. I don't make an apology for it, Hugh, because I think as we are in a period in the last decade when some lunatics have even made it to positions of power right across the globe, it's been the rise of what I would call how can I put it? Somebody once said to me, the pond life have got a platform to spread bile and say nasty things about people, and we try and obviously give an opinion on football. It's only a game of football, it's sport. And we try and be as fair and balanced as we possibly can. Some people don't think you're balanced because they look and they'll say, oh, he's a Celtic fan, he's a Rangers fan, or whatever. I think more often than not, the best thing to do is dismiss them out of hand and look at what people say in context.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it is, is the validity of the opinion. You just give your opinion without fear or prejudice, and just throw it out there. And if people come back, hey, great, because it's their opinion as well.
Yeah,
we're not sitting here saying
we're light the way in the truth.
100% correct. I mean, as I said earlier in the show, I'm sure I had Kilmarnock either to go down or in 11th, and they're not. And that's down to the way Derek McInnes has gone about his business this year, and all credit to him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kilmarnock stay in the Premiership, Ross County in the playoffs, Dundee United relegated, and no surprise Dundee United are relegated. Certainly on the evidence of the game that I watched on Wednesday, Hugh, they were absolutely abysmal. I can remember all the way back to the start of the season, this season, Hugh. I can remember going back to Ruffy said to me, where are you going tonight? I said, I'm going up to Tannadice. I'm going to watch Dundee United against AZ Alkmaar. And it was buzzing. It was buzzing.
What a result.
It was great. Dundee United won by a 1-0. The place was reminiscent of the old European days that United were involved in. And it was just great to be there. And I actually thought to myself, wow, United could be okay this season under Jack Ross. I like Jack Ross as a person, and then I thought to myself, they could be all right, but that board deserved tremendous criticism. The background, the way they've operated, the scattergun approach to buying players, some that don't deserve the wages they're on, some people have cheated the fans. And the board deserved tremendous criticism. Sacking him after 7 games was absolute lunacy. Bringing in a novice was even more lunacy. And then from there, I mean, I must admit, I was gobsmacked when Jim Goodwin got that job right away after Aberdeen. No harm to Jim. 3 consecutive wins, and you thought, my God, he's managed to turn it around in a short space of time. But now Jim at least has got a chance to build his own side in the Championship.
Yeah, and a big task for him. And you go back to that Jack Ross team's win against AZ Alkmaar, who were a terrific team and got to the last stages of the European tournament. So a top-notch team, and that great Glenn Middleton goal that night, everything was rosy. I think Alkmaar away, Celtic at home, that just torpedoed the season. And it torpedoed the season in a way that exposed, yes, deficiencies, but it also caused Jack Ross to leave or be sacked. And after that, it's been downhill all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something I'm going to look at here that's just been sent to me, and it is... It's a tweet that's just gone out from Dundee. Just shows you the nature of things. I mean, by the way, there's banter all across. I mean, I think Ange Postecoglou's speech yesterday was, a wee fire back at being a lucky man. But Dundee have just said, Dundee's Premier Club flying the flag for our city, the D. And obviously, I think that's a wee dig as United go down and Dundee go up.
Pass each other on the route. I mean, I noticed that at one point everybody said when Dundee went up, wouldn't it be great? It's great, it's the Dundee Derby's back. And I must admit, my eyebrow went up a bit and said, not yet, it isn't. So, it's all a part of football, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bants, Peter the Bants.
Well, I quite like it, Hugh. I don't know about you, I'm not in any way offended by people who have a dig at each other.
Well, that's what football exists on. It exists on rivalries. I mean, that's it.
Well, as you know yourself, there's a lot of people who are waiting to be professionally offended these days, but at the end of the day, if you want to have a wee noise up, absolutely love that. Love a bit of banter, as Hugh mentioned there. And also, we love to see goals hitting the back of the net, and we also love to see the top teams in the top league. I would have loved to have seen Dundee United stay in the league because of the Dundee Derby. I do think, Hugh, we should have had I know that a lot of people argue that we should have had a bigger league, 16, where you've got enough teams that can actually bring in big crowds. Dundee Derby is a sellout more often than not. Edinburgh Derby, sellout, fantastic. Sometimes you can't get a ticket for love nor money. The Glasgow Derby,
Falkirk, Fairmont this season,
absolutely.
And the third tier of Scottish football was a sellout. 8,000 people. I was there that day. 8,000 people for Falkirk, Fairmont.
Yeah, absolutely. William Smith has just highlighted something that we say more often than not. This is not the show for you. There are a few people, actually. I know that some people think I get miffed by it all, but there are a few people just, that just cannot conduct themselves properly, and I do mention that from time to time, but I make no excuses for it. There are some people who really, we would be well placed to lose them as viewers, and I wouldn't shed a tear on it. And there are some people obviously who we have mentioned from time to time. One person is Ruffy's Fish man, who's absolutely battered them the other day there, just basically saying, just offering an opinion on the situation. And of course we've had various people. One of the biggest laughs I've had throughout the whole season, Hugh, is a number of what I would call how can I put it? Let me be diplomatic about this. Rangers fans calling for PLZ Soccer to be banned because they don't like criticism. I mean, not the majority of sane Rangers fans, just a fringe element who somehow have a platform, and a voice that thankfully, Rangers Football Club don't listen to. Just because we're offering an opinion on certain things, which are facts.
Aye, I mean, but that's the things like we talk about.
Get your mic off the table. Get them off the table. I'm thinking, give me peace,
But in many ways, that adds to the gaiety of the nation as well, Peter.
Absolutely. Listen, I've been in a revolving door at Celtic and Rangers for more than a few years. It does not bother me. As long as you give an opinion and you try and be as honest as you possibly can with it, that is the key to it all. And thank you to everyone for the support on that. And thank you to some of you who are criticisers. We can take criticism, but we just from time to time try and save the normal people from the loonies. Anyway, as far as today is concerned, I think Robert points out here that the Scottish Cup final at Hampden Park, I was hoping for a bigger crowd there, I must admit. Didn't quite materialise. Celtic and Rangers fans didn't get behind it the way I had hoped they would be. In a sunny day, take the family along. In the end, Celtic won it by 2-0. Set pieces really undone Rangers.
Absolutely, and there was a period just in the second half where a series of set pieces were discomforting the Rangers' defence, and two quick quiet goals from corners, and that was it. And that was your cup final.
Yeah, I've got a full-time assessment coming in. I think Livingston boss Davy Martindale reflecting on the season and that result today.
Because I think what the group has shown, I'm not being detrimental to the group, what the group has shown is we're soft. We're soft and away from home. We're conceding sloppy goals. So I need to change that.
Yeah, I think he's going to try and change it. I think he's going to bring in a centre half on Monday and a few others after that.
I wouldn't like to hear him when he was being detrimental to the squad.
Well, to be fair, there's another brilliant. He provided us with the best bit of half-time analysis when one of the ball boys recorded him absolutely battering his team.
Yeah, that was, I always liked that.
Where was that game?
Oh goodness, I can't remember.
I can't remember what game it was, but nevertheless, he absolutely battered them. And I think not that he dispelled the myth, because we all know that managers, and some people say, the players can't take criticism now. They do. They get absolutely annihilated by managers. They get their heads ripped off at times. Yeah. It still happens, Hugh.
Absolutely. I mean, the difficulty for managers now is that the power balance has changed. Not so much at places at Livingston, but you only have to look at the very top clubs like Chelsea, etc. You can see the way the most important people now are in the dressing room are the ones that are wearing strips, and the manager's got a very difficult balancing act to the Mourinho, for example. The way Mourinho worked at one time wouldn't work now. And he's softened around the edges a bit.
Are the players more precious now?
Yeah, and I think they're more realistic about what the reality is. I mean, I think they know that at one time, funny enough, Peter, I just finished reading Dennis Law's, which I'd never got round to. His autobiography, I found it in the house and started reading it, and at one point he put in a transfer request for Manchester United, and he was fined for that. And he was told, you're not getting a penny more, and we're fining you for, more or less for
asking to leave.
And we're not picking you this week, right? Now, 50, 60 years on, the reality is that, if a player goes to the board and says, or a group of players goes to the board and says, we don't fancy that manager, the board looks at them, whether it be Conte or Tuchel or Lampard or whatever, they look at it and say, or Mourinho even at Chelsea, and they go, well, do we want 4 players worth 200 million euros leaving, or do we just bin the manager? We'll just bin the manager.
Absolutely. One man who's looking forward to that career as a manager, 3 years is the deal that Stephen McLean's got. This is his assessment of St Johnstone's win today against Livingston.
I want them to maintain that, so no, delighted with the players. They've given me everything they've got, but again, we will keep trying to improve. I'll not be resting on 3 wins and 2 draws. No, I want to keep pushing on. I want to win every game that I go to. I'll be positive. I want my teams to be positive. I want to play in the front foot, and I want to enjoy football, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a manager. There's a manager who's just reiterating what Stevie Naismith said. He wants Hearts to play in the front foot. Steve McLean wants St Johnstone to do that. Let's hope he can live by that code. It's sometimes difficult because, as you know, many a manager wants to play a certain way, but if you haven't got the players, you can't play that way.
Yeah, and then if you play that way against vastly superior teams, you get the abacus out. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, he's been an absolute delight, and I have to say, full marks to him. Patrick Mullen was up there at a game that really didn't have too much at stake. Patrick, you were watching St Johnstone against Livingston. You still managed to make it sound exciting in that first half when it was rank rotten, but nevertheless, you were listening to a manager who's got a 3-year deal at St Johnstone. Stephen McLean must be looking forward to building that team, making his own signings in the summer.
Yeah, that's right, Peter. The main message coming from Stephen McLean at that press conference is that he can't wait for his summer transfer. He's going to build his team. He says he's happy with his coaching staff, but that team he wants to make his own and make a push for the top 6 next season.
And in contrast to that, the look on David Martindale's face said it all, really. I think the real key point of the season for him was when they didn't make the top 6, Livingston. It kind of deflated the players and the manager as well. And you could tell he wasn't happy. There are changes afoot, I fear, for many a player at Livingston. Did you get that sense today, Patrick?
Yeah, David was saying that actually in the press conference, that he was getting ready for 4 or 5 players, have been told already that they are going to have their playing time reduced. They might not even be training with the squad, and they have to be looking for new players. They only had 4 players on the bench here today due to injuries for a lot of their squads. They need a lot of new faces in the building in the summer, but it's all going to come down to that budget that David Martindale has said repeatedly is really diminishing for him next season.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the difficult part of a manager, trying to build a side with a very small budget. Just before you go, Patrick, it's been an unbelievable season for you. I mean, great credit to you. At times you've been super excited about games that Hugh and I have looked at and thought, really? They're rank rotten, those games, but you've been mega excited. What's been the favourite game? Here's the $64,000 question. What's been the game you've enjoyed the most in the season, Patrick?
I think I'm going to have to go back to the first ever game that I actually did. It was Partick Thistle Dunfermline in the Scottish Cup. I think it was the 3rd round. It was a 3-3 extra time, penalties, 5-3. I remember all I was hoping for was a nice easy 1 or 2-0 to start off my career at PLZ, and I think you sent me to the hardest game of the weekend.
Doesn't get any better than that, Hugh, does it?
And the poor old Patrick as well, he spent all his earnings from PLZ today on Factor 50.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the one thing, Patrick. Patrick, I am absolutely gobsmacked by the amount of people who've emailed us and said, don't put Patrick anywhere where it's sunny, we're worried about him, they've been concerned for your health. But to be perfectly honest with you, you're part of a team that's doing a great job, so it's absolutely magnificent. Patrick, you have earned it tonight. Now, the only thing I would say to you, Patrick, is everything in moderation. I know you're going to the Scottish Football Writers. It's the first one for you. Are you suited and booted and ready for it?
Yeah, Peter, I've got my suit ready. I'm just disappointed that you're not coming to buy me a few drinks. I think that's deserved for the trips to Aberdeen, Ross County and now Perth. But yeah, we'll be looking forward to it later tonight.
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic, superb. Patrick Mullen there, who's been on the road for us throughout the season, absolutely brilliant, and part of a team of people at PLZ Soccer. Hopefully we'll build even more and add to as we go on for the new season as well. Still, you got to see a game where there was 2 goals, Hugh. There's nothing worse than heading to... I've been to Ross County before for a 0-0.
Aye, I think one thing, Patrick's of our ilk, and so are the others, that just going to a game and we'll get something out of it. We'll always get something out of it. We'll get a bit of experience out of it, a bit of pointer. I mean, they'll say that's a nothing game today. But a very important game for Stephen McLean, because it'll show, that's a bit of momentum going into the close season. And a very important game for David Martindale as well, because he's going to address problems that he perceives as on his side, so that thing about meaningless games, you always get something, always get a wee line out of any game.
Yeah, absolutely. We're live, we're trying to bring you managers and players right across football in Scotland, so let's get the thoughts of Celtic's women's manager Fran Alonso after they secured the Scottish Cup today, defeating Rangers by 2-0.
He meant the world. It meant the world to me. This week it was very hard to pick the girls up after, for 2 minutes we didn't win the league, which was really our dream in front of a domestic record crowd. We really wanted to give the fans what I think the girls deserve. Of course, other team won it and credit to them and they deserve it. But in my point of view, it was too tough on the girls. I think football was cruel to us. But we transfer this anger, this disappointment. We transfer into aggression, into passion, and I think today, against a superb team, I think we dominate the game.
Yeah, well done to Fran Alonso. Of course, you can tell it must have hurt Rangers and Celtic to lose that title last day, Glasgow City winning it.
Well, that's Glasgow City's greatest domestic achievement to me. I mean, I know they won 14 consecutive titles, but the resources that were thrown out against this season, I think that'll be and I think Laura Montgomery, co-owner, there would agree with that. That was the biggest title to win. Celtic, of course, got some consolation today, a Scottish Cup final victory, so there'll be something on their names for this season. Fortunately for Rangers, they got what we call the League of the SPFL trophy before Christmas. They beat I think it was Hibernian in the final, so they've got a trophy as well. So all 3 get a trophy this season.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, at the end of the day, it's getting bigger, it's getting better, it's getting stronger as well. And of course, 2 clubs will be involved in Champions League football, which is to be celebrated as well. The English Premier League certainly has got a few twists and turns ahead. The most nervy place will undoubtedly be at Goodison Park, where quite simply Everton have to find a goal from somewhere against Bournemouth, or they'll be heading out of the Premier League if Leicester can hold on to their advantage.
Yeah, it's so tight at the bottom. Leeds have lost a second goal at Spurs, so they're really in the hole. It's very, very tight between Everton and Leicester. But Everton at least need a goal at the moment, is it? Whatever stands at Leicester.
And isn't it ironic that Everton might be hoping that somewhere a former manager and David Moyes can do them a turn with an equaliser against Leicester?
Yeah, but the big problem as well is that if you're looking for teams to do your a favour, I don't think you'd be looking at West Ham at the moment. Not because of any skullduggery or anything, but they've achieved their goals this season, right? And they've got the biggest game of their careers, or many of players' careers coming up. They've got a European final coming up.
Yeah.
That's not necessary. I'm not suggesting in any way there's down tools, but it might just dull the edge of absolutely going that extra 10 yards to get a draw at Leicester.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at this moment, you know, everybody is biting their nails. This is when you get the close up on the kids crying with their dads and their mums and everybody. It's the worst feeling ever at the end of a Premiership season in England, here in Scotland as well. When you see kids crying, it just does you in, doesn't it?
Well, it never fails to do that. I mean, because that is the thing about football. Everton just missed a good chance there. The thing about football is that capacity to, even as I'm 68, Dortmund yesterday, you know, the devastation. I mean, and I know there's much more important things than football, but as has been regularly remarked, you know, football is the most important of the least important things, and football teams have got the capacity to lift you and enrich you and give you elation, but they've also got the capacity to devastate you, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the Scottish Premiership. Let's have a look at the overall scores for the Saturday then. Celtic 5, Aberdeen 0. The champions received the trophy and celebrated in style, with Ange Postecoglou and Callum McGregor lifting that trophy and enjoying the day in the sun. So Celtic are the champions now, chasing down a treble if they can defeat Inverness Cally Thistle in the Scottish Cup final on June 3rd. Then they will indeed be treble winners. Hearts 1, Hibs 1 means Hearts finish 4th and they will have European football. Hibs need to rely on Celtic defeating Inverness to have a chance of European football by finishing 5th. St Mirren 0, Rangers 3. 92 points for Rangers, as Michael Beale mentioned. It's the end of the season, may not have delivered, but now there's a chance for Rangers to build under Michael Beale. What can they do next season? Can they get Champions League group stage football and of course win the title from Celtic? Kilmarnock 3, Ross County 1. Well done to Derek McInnes. His side stay in the Scottish Premiership with that win. Ross County, well, they have to fight another day. 2 games against Partick Thistle in the playoffs for the right to stay in the Premiership or indeed go down, and we welcome the Jags up. It's all to play for. Motherwell 3, Dundee United 2. Dundee United are relegated. It's been an abysmal season, and Jim Goodwin quite simply has to rebuild and try and get United out of the Championship at the first time of asking. As United go down, Dundee are coming up. St Johnstone 2, Livingston 0. Stephen McLean is the manager on a 3-year deal there, and David Martindale, well, licking his wounds and looking at what might have been for Livingston in that top 6 didn't quite materialise for them, and they were in the bottom 6, and their form hasn't been great all the way to the end of the season since the split. So there's big rebuilding at Livingston as well. That's been the story of the season. I've certainly enjoyed it, Hugh. Certainly enjoyed all the banter we've had, the one-to-ones, the news that we've brought everyone. It's been an entertaining season. Ruffy and obviously Tam Cowan and Neil Murray. There's been Alison McConnell, absolutely brilliant. Tam McManus, and as I mentioned, Ruffy. It's been a good old season with us all.
Aye, and it's been an exciting season as well, and we've never been short of a story, have we? Scottish football's capacity to provide big stories has never wavered. Scottish football as well, I mean, and we can talk it down in terms of quality because any team didn't have a good European run. But in terms of interest, Peter, the thing I think has been tremendous is the way the Scottish football fans have turned out yet again in person to watch Scottish football. You know, you're getting sellouts at Pittodrie, sellouts Easter Road, as we talked about earlier, at Tynecastle always packed, Celtic and Rangers the same. Great attendances down the league as well. Thistle fans have rallied around that club, and we saw tremendous attendances in the place, and further down at Airdrie and Falkirk and Dunfermline. Tremendous capacity crowd, so good on the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much to every one of you for your support. We'll be back with a cup final special on Friday, but PLZ Soccer continues. If you download the app, you'll get all the breaking football news. You'll also have all the managers' interviews and players right across our social media channels all this week and beyond, taking you right through the summer. Big news, big signings. We're going to be bigger and better for the new season. Thank you to each and every one of you for your support. Thank you to our backroom staff who've been absolutely superb throughout the whole season. I can tell you right now, Everton have just taken the lead in that match against Bournemouth. They've been battering away. They are hoping that somehow they could get the goal that would put them in a position where they could stay in the Premier League. Well, they've scored against Bournemouth. There's your last little piece of information. If you want to stay up to date on what's happening in the English Premier League, in the Scottish Premiership, the reaction from the managers over the course of Saturday and Sunday, then don't forget, right across social media on PLZ Soccer, we've got all the breaking football stories. It's on our website, it's on our app, and of course on YouTube. You've got so much content there, and that will continue throughout the summer, so do stay with us and hit the subscribe button and hit the bell, and you'll get all the notifications of our unique video content. From Hugh and myself and everyone at PLZ Soccer, thank you for your support for the season, and don't worry, we're with you all through the summer, and then we'll be back with our football show next season as well. We'll see you next Friday.